Welcome to the Resilient Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Kachigian, and today I'm joined by Christy Wise. As an Air Force rescue pilot, Captain Christy Wise has dedicated her professional life to saving the lives of isolated personnel by piloting the world's premier combat search and rescue airframe, the HC-130J. She is a combat veteran, having served one tour in Afghanistan. Following her amputation, Christy completed rehabilitation at San Antonio Military Medical Center's Center for the Intrepid, returned to her primary duty station, and in late June 2016 became the first female amputee in Air Force history to return to flying duty. Christy is a 2009 graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy and received her Master of Arts in Theology from Liberty University. She is also a registered foster parent in the state of Georgia. I first met Christy in September of 2015 at an Air Force function where it turned out we had a very close mutual friend in common, somebody that Christy had rehabilitated with at the Center for the Intrepid in Texas. Christy and I are both part of the rescue community in the Air Force, so we kind of hit it off, and as you'll see from our conversation, Christy is one of the most tenacious yet simultaneously humble and charitable people you'll ever come across. Christy, thanks so much for joining us here. Appreciate your time. I wanted to start out by asking you, so you're a C-130J pilot in the Air Force, and for the people who aren't too familiar with the different missions in the Air Force, can you talk a little bit about the rescue mission that you do on the C-130?
Yeah, no problem. I fly the HC-130J model. It's a C-130, but we have a little bit of extra things added to it. So we refuel helicopters, HH-60s or Army helicopters, and we also work with the pararescue jumpers, so the guys that jump out of the back. And our goal is primarily rescue. So whether it's somebody that went down behind enemy lines, when we're at war, hiker that's lost in the mountains, we plan to search for them, rescue them, and get them back safely.
Very cool. And not only are you doing a unique mission in the Air Force that's very selective, but 2 years ago you had an accident where it made it a lot more difficult to fly and maintain the physical qualifications to fly. So can you talk a little bit about what happened and then how that kind of,
Sure. So I am an amputee above the knee, lost my leg. We're just about at the 2-year mark. April 11, 2015 was when it happened. And I'm actually the 6th Air Force amputee to get back to duty and back to flying. So I'm not the first. I didn't break history or make history, but it's not something I recommend for anybody else to try. But so 2 years ago, I was on vacation. So I had just gotten back from a deployment, and I was stationed in Georgia at the time, and I was in Florida paddleboarding with my friends. 2 of my best friends are stationed at Eglin Air Force Base, so they have our house right there on the water. And my boyfriend and I were actually paddleboarding right out behind their house in this protected cove. So there wasn't really ever any boats in there because it was inside the cove, and we were about 100 meters out from their dock in this place where I had honestly paddleboarded probably 100 times before. And that day it was right after dinner, so starting to get dark, and so we brought flashlights with us and our life jackets as we went out on our boards right behind their house, and a boat swerved into the cove, and I looked up and the boat was coming right at me, and so I waved. I had my flashlight, so I waved it at them to say, hey, I'm here, don't hit me, and I fully expected them to go one way or the other, and so it took me a second or two longer to realize that it was still coming right at me. So I dove in the water to swim away, and that's when I got hit by the boat. I actually got hit in the shoulder. And then the first miracle that happened was I pushed off the bottom of the boat and I swam down. So somehow I know this was my guardian angel, because there's no way I had time to think that. But because I pushed off the bottom of the boat and swam down, the propeller, which was at the back of the boat, only got my right leg as I was swimming down instead of my entire body, which would have gone through the propeller. And so I surfaced, and the first thing I thought was, crap, I should have had a brighter flashlight. So that was pretty funny, and it didn't hurt or anything. I was really calm. And so my boyfriend swam over to me. Is also in the Air Force. He's a HH-60 helicopter pilot. And he swam over to me really fast. He said, Christy, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm okay. And the boat that hit me never stopped, so it was a hit and run accident. And about this time was when I looked down and saw my bone sticking out of my leg. And that's when I realized it was probably pretty bad. So at that time, I had remembered seeing another fishing boat, which was actually over by the bridge. There was a bridge about a half-mile away, and that's where there would be boat traffic. So I don't remember seeing that before, but when I needed it, I was like, oh, there's a fishing boat over there. We should signal them to come get us. We weren't that far from, like I said, my friend's dock, but we had both jumped off our boards to swim away, so we didn't know where our boards were. So I looked down to signal the fishing boat, and I still had my flashlight in my right hand, which is the next miracle to me because I don't know how I got hit by a boat, swam down, and now when I need it, I still have my light in my hand. So we signaled the fishing boat, and they had actually seen the entire thing happen, so they were already coming to us anyway, but because I had the flashlight, they were able to get to me in the water faster, and they picked me up, put me in the back of the boat. My leg was still attached at the time. It was right at the knee, and it was attached by the hamstring. And then in the back of the boat, Tim, my boyfriend, they laid me on this cooler, and he had a long sleeve shirt on. So in the water, he tied it around my leg, but it wasn't really tight enough. So when I was in the back of the fishing boat, they used a fishing net handle to tighten off a tourniquet, and that's when they finally got the blood to stop. So the miracle is that I was in the water about 3 minutes, we anticipate, and I my hemoglobin level went down. So, normal range is about 12 to 16. I didn't know anything about hemoglobin levels before I lost a leg, but now obviously I do. And so normal is 12 to 16. They basically give you a transfusion for anything below 7, and you're almost dead at 4. And my hemoglobin level when they got me, having only been in the water for 3 minutes, was 6. So it's pretty low. And we think that, probably another 30 seconds or so, and I wouldn't be here talking to you today. So I'm really happy to be doing that.
That's unbelievable. And I mean, all those different things, like you were able to hold on to the light. It's truly, like you said, who knows what the reason is for it. But again, like when you can have such an unfortunate incident, but that much luck, I guess there's no way to explain it. And then we're going to get into some of this stuff later, but some of your adaptive sports achievements and obviously your recovery to getting back in the cockpit. But looking at you now, you've obviously made the best of a really bad situation, and even when the initial, crisis happened, you were kind of in problem-solving mode, trying to wave down the boat. You said you felt no pain. You had people putting tourniquets on you. So kind of like your sort of training as a pilot where when there's a crisis, you kind of go into your emergency procedures. But at what point or how long after the initial incident did you think, did it kind of hit the realization strike you that, hey, you're missing a leg? Were you thinking right away, I'm going to get back to being a pilot? I'm going to compete in adaptive sports? Or what was kind of psychologically the phases that you went through?
So it's in a lot of ways I was pretty blessed. The first was that when I was undergoing pilot training in Del Rio, Texas from 2009 and 2011, I actually knew there was a guy in the class a year ahead of me, Ryan McGuire, who had been in a boating accident too, ironically, in pilot training, and he lost his leg. It was below the knee, but he went to actually the Center for the Intrepid as well, and he got back to flying. He was returned to flying and student status. And so in the back of the ambulance, so once I got in the boat and we got to the ambulance, and I was laying in the back of the ambulance, and I wasn't sure at that point, I couldn't feel my leg, which I knew was bad. And I remember thinking, I actually was smiling, dang it, the schedulers are going to be upset at me because this is probably going to take me out of flying for a little while. And then I remember thinking, okay, worst case scenario, Ryan did it, I can do it. So the best part for me was that I never really doubted getting back to flying. So that was always a goal. From the back of the ambulance before my leg was even gone, I was already thinking, if this happens, I'm going to get back to flying. And the other awesome thing is that the network and the military, it's so cool. It's such a family that the 5 others, so I said I'm the 6th amputee to return to flying, the 5 other amputees, just by word of mouth or whatever, all within my first week in the hospital, almost all of them had called me. So I had these, phone calls saying, hey, I'm John Alvarez. I was the first pilot to return in 1997. When you're ready, I'm here. Call me. I can help you with the steps. So that part was really cool in that I always knew that it was possible, and I even knew the steps. It was just getting there, being able to do it. And so what I tell people as far as like mentally, it's good and bad every single day. So the funny thing is, it was actually easier for me, at least mentally, to do some of the hard things. Like I knew getting back to flying was going to be hard, but I knew it was possible. I knew getting back to running and passing my physical fitness test was going to be hard, but I was always determined to do it. A lot of times what would really get me would be the small stuff. Like I would trip on the way to my car after a full day of work, or I would have a blister, or my foot would be squeaking as I walked around the squadron. It'd be like those little things usually that I'd be like, my life is terrible. So it's kind of funny actually with that.
It's amazing how the mind can adapt, but then you could still be bothered by those seemingly trivial things relative to what you accomplish.
Ridiculous stuff.
And I think what's also funny is that is a legit case of military humor where you talk about how like your initial reaction was that you were going to be like lose your credentials and get taken off flight status, because unless you've been in the military and dealt with that bureaucracy, like when you said that, that's totally a natural reaction for someone who's been indoctrinated into the military culture. So it's like, oh my God, like they're going to have to uncheck some boxes that I'm going to have to recheck at some point. So that's really funny. True. And again, like kind of sick, but at the same time, if you're in the military, pretty normal reaction considering everything else, even that was going on around you.
Right.
You mentioned the Center for the Intrepid. So for the people who don't know what that is, can you talk about kind of like, what the Center for the Intrepid is, and then how the atmosphere there facilitated your rehabilitation? Because it really is a unique place. And I think that, I'm just speculating, but I feel like the atmosphere there probably had a lot to do with, just the positive outlook you were able to maintain during your rehabilitation.
Yeah. So it was pretty awesome for me because even from the first, like when I called my squadron, I called a friend in the squadron and had him call the commander at the first, from the back of the ambulance. And then literally the next day in Florida, so I was down in Florida and it was about a 4-hour drive from the base that I was at in Georgia. The next day I felt like half the base was in my hospital room, which was so cool. And then immediately they started working to get me medevaced because I was in the civilian hospital. They were trying to get me sent either to Walter Reed, which is kind of the one people know more. It's more of a household name, Walter Reed, or the Center for the Intrepid in San Antonio. And so my flight doctors back at the base were just working to see which is the best place for her, and they were going to send me to one of those two. And they ended up working out the paperwork and everything. So I left 2.5 days later. So I was in the civilian hospital for 2.5 days, and then I went to San Antonio to SAMC. And I was really, really lucky because I actually didn't even finish my amputation. So the way an amputation usually works is the first night they do the initial, and then your leg, there's so much trauma and so much swelling that they actually don't do the intricate, like wrapping the nerves and like making it ready for a prosthesis. Like if you're going to get back to running and skydiving and scuba diving, you got to have something that can hopefully take some force. And so they don't do that surgery where they wrap all the nerves and the intricate stuff until later when the swelling has gone down. So because I was medevac to the Brooks Army Medical Center, I had one of the best surgeons in the Army. He's done like 100 amputations for all these people from the war and other things, and he was my surgeon. So he did my surgery, and I really feel blessed in that way because I've had a lot less pain and a lot less issues that maybe some other amputees have had, and I know that is just so lucky, like so awesome for me that I had that support. And then beyond that, like once I was released from the hospital after having the surgery with him, I went immediately across the street to the Center for the Intrepid, which is basically just this huge rehab center. And if I ever wanted to feel sorry for myself for losing a leg, I couldn't because I would be in there working on whatever, running, walking, and like 2 spots over from me would be this other guy who was an IED in Afghanistan, one of my buddies, and he's lost like 2 legs and he's blind. And oh, by the way, he beat me at bowling yesterday or something. And so that was really cool. And then my 2 very closest rehab friends were actually 2 PJs, so pararescue jumpers, which is so cool because in my military job, that's actually who I work with every day in my airplane. And then it just so happened that there was 2 PJ amputees, and they lost their legs right around the same time as me, so we were always kind of going through this together. And well, they were both ahead of me a little bit. So anytime I would think, oh my gosh, this stair mode in this leg is impossible, I cannot do it, it takes so much energy, then I would see August, I would complain to him, and he'd be like, okay, cool, let me just show you how to do it. And he'd just go right up the stairs really fast. So that was awesome. It really definitely pushed me and showed me that, yeah, you can do anything.
Yeah, and I mean, without naming any names, I know both the PJs you mentioned, and I'm pretty sure they're both back on status, and one of them is actually deployed right now,
Right.
and he's an above the knee amputation, and he's skydiving, and he's mountaineering, and he's ice climbing, so doing some incredible things. So I think it's really cool that you guys were all able to endure that together. And now, prior to all this happening, you were a pretty serious competitive athlete, up until your college years, and then after your accident, you competed at a very high level in adaptive sports. So could you talk a little bit about your competitive athletic background prior to the injury, and then how this whole process sort of evolved into you competing in adaptive sports and the Invictus Games?
Sure. So it's funny, I played 2 sports in college. So I was on the snow skiing team, Air Force snow skiing team, and also the softball team. And actually, that is the reason I joined the Air Force. So my entire life growing up, I always wanted to ski in college. That was my goal. And so when I got recruited for the Air Force team, Air Force Academy team, that is why I went to the Air Force. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I really want to play sports in college. Also, maybe this military thing, it sounds pretty cool. I think I would like that. So I always joke with people that is how I joined, which is kind of unusual for a pilot. Most people wanted to be pilots for a lot longer, but me, I just wanted to play sports. So sports are always a huge part of my life. And then even after in pilot training, and then before my accident, I was always coaching or playing something. Loved it. And so I don't know, kind of the first thing that happened when I lost my leg, besides in the back of the ambulance saying, I'm going to get back to my job because, Ryan did it, I can do it. The other thing I actually told my sister was, I'm not going to let this change me. I just have to learn some more tricks, and I'm going to get back to doing everything I did before. So that was always just kind of a goal, like one sport at a time, whatever I have to do. But another reason why I got lucky, so I was actually in the rehab center, in the center for the Intrepid, and I couldn't even get a prosthetic leg yet. So until your incision where your accident happened is closed, you can't get a prosthetic leg. And that can take for me, it took a month and a half. So I was discharged from the hospital, and I was in the rehab center, and basically all I was doing was working out 8 hours a day. And my brother actually is a professional skier, and so I was joking with him. I was like, David, this is what it's like to be a professional athlete. I'm in such good shape because all I was doing was working out 8 hours a day. And I also joke with people that losing a leg is kind of like a weight loss technique that you might, because my leg that I lost was 15 pounds. That's gone. I don't have a prosthetic leg yet. And then because I don't only have one leg, I'm on crutches everywhere. So I always joke with people, but before I lost my leg, I could do maybe like 3 or 4 or 5 pull-ups. Well, when I was in that phase, I was doing like sets of 7 in the rehab center because I was lighter. I'm crutching around everywhere. I have 8. I'm so in such good shape. And so I got super lucky. One of the Air Force team coaches she's actually also an amputee for the Wounded Warrior Games, and she was getting one of her legs fixed, and she just happened to come in when I was doing all these pull-ups. And so she comes over to me and she's like, hey, have you ever heard about Air Force Wounded Warrior sports or adaptive sports? And I said, no, I haven't. She's like, okay, I think we want to recruit you for Warrior Games. And I was like, okay, cool. And she's like, yeah, it's in 2 weeks. So I was like, sure. And so she calls the rest of the team and she said, hey, I have a new athlete for you guys. And they said, okay, cool. Well, maybe she can go to a camp in August or something. And then Carrie said to them, they're like, no, she's ready now. And so it was so cool because that was one of the hardest times for me mentally because I was just bored. I went from being a full-time pilot, foster parent, skydiving, doing all this stuff, and now I'm in a new city with no friends. I'm only doing rehab 8 hours a day, working out, but then I don't have anything to do in my evenings. And so when they recruited me for the team, the Air Force team was the best thing that could have happened to me at that time because now all of a sudden because I didn't even have a prosthetic leg yet, I did everything in that game's seated. So I did wheelchair racing, I did the hand bike, I did seated shot put and discus. I was doing everything from a chair. So because I didn't have a leg yet. And that was awesome because now all of a sudden I had all these sports to learn, all these team practices to go to. And then when I went to Warrior Games, I definitely stood out because I competed in that event only 9 weeks after losing my leg. So I was still on crutches and everything, and all the other amputees were a lot older, and everyone was like, this girl's 9 weeks out. And so then all of a sudden I had like 200 other athletes from all over the military, all services, coming up to me, giving me advice, like, Christy, you got to get this leg, you got to do this. Hey, can I hold your coffee for you? Like, it was so cool. Like, it was probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. So that got my initial like foot in the door in Warrior Games. And then the following year, so after that Warrior Games, by then I had healed enough. I was able to get a prosthetic leg. Then I really was able to like focus on the stuff I needed to fly, running, walking, and that stuff. But then I had said, next year, if I ever compete again, I'm not going to do anything seated. I'm going to do everything standing, since the first year I did everything seating. And so when I got invited to Invictus Games for the U.S. team the following year, I was just really excited to do everything, kind of the same events that I had done before, but not seated, standing. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and then, we were talking off the air a little bit prior to the conversation now, and you mentioned that you're actually back skiing, and even prior to your accident, you were a skydiver. So, and you were mentioning some pretty cool things with the prosthetic technology and how that's allowed you to ski standing up, not sitting down. So can you talk a little bit about the prosthetic technology you're using to ski, and then even some of the unique insights that you gave one of the PJs when it comes to skydiving with a prosthetic leg?
Sure. Yeah. So, skiing was always huge for me because I ski raced in college. So, I have, there's a guy, his name is Mike Schultz, and his company is called BioAdapt, and he was a snowmobiler, X Games gold medalist, and he lost his leg in a snowmobile crash, actually, so doing what he loved. And then he was the one who built the leg to get back to doing that, because at the time there was no knees that were good for doing sort of any aggressive type sport. So there was nothing where you can like put a lot of pressure into something and it'll give back to you. And so he actually built his legs. It's literally with a Fox shock, like the shock that you would have on your bike, and that's your knee. So it's a Fox shock suspended in this metal frame, and then you like increase or decrease the pressure. So you can wakeboard, you can snowmobile, you can do anything where you can actually put pressure into the knee and it'll come back to you. And so he's the one who built that, which is for skiing. And so because of my brother is a professional skier, and so he actually already knew Mike, and so it just ended up being this whole cool little trio of, okay, well, my brother's helping me try to get back to skiing because it's one of the things I love, but we're tinkering with this knee. We don't know how to use it. Okay, let's call Mike because David knows Mike because they're both in like this X Game community. Okay, well, awesome. Mike is competing in X Games. My brother's competing in X Games. Well, I'm just going to go watch them, and then after I watch them, me and Mike are going to ski together, and he's going to help teach me how to use this, how to adjust the pressures on this ski leg. And then this year I got to be a prototype to test a ski ankle. So the knee is awesome in itself, and then he built another shock ankle that clicks directly into the ski, which helps the whole setup work better. So it's really cool. This year I got to go out to X Games and watch them both compete and ski with them, which was amazing and super fun because last year, I was doing pretty good, but I was not really linking turns together that great. And then being, a skier and I'm a competitive person, that was frustrating me. So this year it's getting a lot better and obviously still always work to improve upon. And then the cool thing is just like, when I figure something out, I can tell my two other, all my other amputee buddies, okay, guys, I figured out skiing, you got to get this. And then, they figure out something else, one of the other PJs, he's already figured out mountain biking, which is with that same shock knee, but I haven't figured out, it's kind of it's a different pressure for sure than skiing. So it's kind of figuring out what pressures and what settings for each sport, which is always fun to like figure out which one you're doing. And then for skydiving, I actually always tell people two of my easiest hobbies to get back to have been skydiving and scuba diving. So both of those are almost basically the same as they were before, whereas everything else is harder. But skydiving, you're just falling out of a plane. So I fall out of the plane and my prosthetic leg will actually bend like 90 degrees, which my normal leg will only bend slightly less than 90. So I just have to adapt a tiny bit with my opposite hand when I'm skydiving. And then now I just have to have better landings, which is so funny because my landings when I would skydive weren't that great when I had two legs. And now I don't know if it's just because I have to have good landings because I can't run them out as well, but they've been really good, my landings now. So I've been able to kind of tell our PJ buddies, one time I was skydiving and I didn't have a jumpsuit on, and my rotator on my leg got pushed a little bit, so my leg rotated a little bit in the air and it made me spin slightly. And so I was able to tell them, hey, don't do that. Make sure you have a jumpsuit or have something covering your rotator so the wind doesn't push it.
Now, did you at least get to spend some time in the wind tunnel before you got back in the sky?
I did.
Okay.
Oh, definitely. So everything is like that. It's always a process. I wasn't going to jump out of a plane the first time without knowing it. So I went in the wind tunnel, felt it out. Okay, how does it react? And then I jumped with like coaches my first time. I was always, every time it's always like a process. Like, okay, this is a hobby I want to get back to. Who do I know that does it? What do they do? Okay, how can I try it safely? And then like you increase to like getting back to, okay, now I'm comfortable doing it again by myself or whatever.
And then how many jumps have you done since you got your prosthetic leg?
Probably not too many, actually. I've only done about 5 or 6 with my leg, but that's only because I just recently was in Florida and I knew I was moving to Arizona for the military, so I was trying to get in as much scuba diving as I possibly could while I still had the ocean nearby.
Smart. Well, you know that you're near a really good drop zone now, so you can get back to jumping.
Eloy.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I knew that. See, I knew I was coming to Eloy, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have skydiving for sure in Arizona, but I won't have scuba diving, so let's try to get in as much of that as I can before I leave.
Well, I mean, obviously your whole life you've been, super athletic, super ambitious, super competitive. Regardless of the accident that you had, I feel like you're the kind of person that you love challenges, and you're kind of, I don't want to say easily bored, but you're always kind of looking for new things. So in light of everything that you've overcome in your life, and especially the last 2 years, like what are your future, professional goals in the Air Force and future athletic goals? Because I feel like you've always got something up your sleeve here. So what's next?
Well, it's cool that you asked that. I think sometimes people will focus on all the stuff I'm doing and just maybe think like, oh my gosh, she's so crazy. Like, how is she doing all these things? But for me, we talked about the mental challenges earlier. And for me, that was always the best way to solve it. So whenever I started slowing down, like before I lost a leg, I was always doing a bunch of things. And so the hardest part for me when I lost a leg was that it forced me to slow down so much initially. And so for me, that's why I've always been like doing as many hobbies as I can and getting back to as many things as I can, because that for me is normal. So that's how I've gotten back to normal. And it's not because I'm crazy or whatever. It's just because when I slow down, that's when I do get depressed. That's when my life does feel different. So to answer your question, I'm really excited to deploy again for the flying. From the beginning, I've always loved deploying. Like when we're home station, we mostly just train. There's not very many rescues that we do while we're in the States. And so for us, our mission really happens when we're deployed. So I'm really excited to deploy again, and I'll probably get to go at the end of this year. And then as far as sports go, I would love someday to do Paralympic skiing, just because skiing has always been such a part of my past and I'd love to do in the future. It's not really an option right now because, the Paralympic skiers are good. They're super good. So it's something that I would have to do probably after my Air Force career or some other time when I can focus on training for it. So we'll see. And another thing as an amputee is that a lot of it kind of depends on how well your good leg holds up. So my good knee and my good ankle, that's always going to be really important. And if those are not holding up, then I'm not going to push it on a Paralympic level or a really intense level, because that's the only one I've got now. So we'll see. That's definitely a goal of mine someday. We'll see if that happens. And I think that's it. The only ones I can think of up my sleeve currently.
Yeah, well, and I'm actually, this is a serious question. It's not going to seem serious, but even the coolest jobs in the military, and you've got a pretty cool job, it's not like every day you're doing really exciting things. So in some ways, like, your rehabilitation when you were, learning how to skydive again, and you're doing all these adaptive sports and competing and working out 8 hours a day, that's not even what, like, a special operations type job as like in the
Yeah,
military on a
you're
daily
right.
basis. So was it an adjustment for you going back into like you're back on status? So now it's like, all right, the honeymoon's over. Now you're responsible for all the paperwork, maintaining all your
Yeah.
currencies. Like I would imagine that in a weird way, that was almost like, was that kind of difficult? Like the almost the boredom of being a pilot in the Air Force, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah, well, it is definitely true that, rehab, it's so funny because rehab was like such a miserable time because it's like you're still having pain and you're not sleeping and you're dealing with losing a leg. But then I was also doing all these fun things. Like I was learning to scuba dive with one leg, and like my rehab was a lot of times really fun. So yeah, going back to work was like, oh, okay, this is back to normal where most pilots work their desk job, 4 days a week and they only fly the one day of the week. So it was always interesting going back to that for sure.
Yeah, because it's like it's really great that you've made this incredible recovery, but now you're not current on your government credit card training. So like
Yeah.
that's got to be something different, and probably that you didn't miss over those 2 years. But I'm sure more than makes up for it. You're back flying. So
Well, yeah, and the other thing is I guess I'm kind of lucky because now I can be choosy. So I still get opportunities all the time to, different Air Force agencies will want me to come speak to them, or people, or, the prosthetic company that has the monopoly of the market. They'll want me to come test new knees, or they'll want me to do, come out and speak at this event. So it's kind of cool now because I can't do that stuff all the time. I end up having to say no to most of it just because, my priority has always been the military and flying. But now it's kind of fun because sometimes I can be like, oh, well, I think I could take this Thursday and Friday off and go test out the wakeboarding knees. The squadron I wasn't scheduled to fly anyway, so the squadron doesn't need me for that.
Right.
So I definitely have more opportunities now than I did before. So that's kind of fun. It's still, in the end, not worth the
certainly.
pros. I still don't recommend losing a leg just so you can have these other cool opportunities, but it definitely makes it it definitely makes it fun.
Now, another neat thing that's come out of all this is you started a charity called the One Leg Up on Life Foundation. So can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to do that and then what the mission of that charity is?
Sure. So it's actually really cool. Kind of like I said earlier, from the night my accident happened, I always had overwhelming support. Moody Air Force Base all showed up in my hospital room the next day. And then when I was medevac to San Antonio, people would just joke because I always had an entourage. Like people were always visiting me. Every single aircraft that we have at Moody Air Force Base, the A-10s, the C-130s, the helicopters, they all flew out. Like if they were flying to Arizona for some exercise, the wing commander would say, hey, you guys are stopping in San Antonio to say hi to Christy, right? It was just so crazy. I always had so much support. And also too from like the community in Florida where my accident happened, my story was actually pretty well known because it was a hit and run accident, and the police investigation to try to find the boat driver went on for months. And so most people in the area had heard about the girl who was hit on a paddleboard, and they had been a part of the investigation or knew something about it. So they were all following the story, and then everybody from my hometown, like I just had so much overwhelming support from everybody that it was my boyfriend, Tim, who in the beginning said, hey, we have a lot of support and we need to do something positive with it. And he said, I want to start a nonprofit and I want to have our first fundraiser at the end of the summer as a paddleboard race in the very spot that you got hit. And I said, okay, let's do it. And it was awesome because, like I said, in those initial phases, the same with the warrior sports, I was just bored. And so now all of a sudden I'm in the hospital, and in the evenings I'm researching 501c3s and planning a paddleboard race. But it was really cool. That first event was just so symbolic to me because it was like, okay, here is what I was doing when I got hit, and it's the very place where I got hit, but I'm not going to be scared of it. I'm not going to be scared of the water. I'm not going to let that affect me, and we're going to keep doing this, and we're going to use it for good. And so that was really cool, too, for the community to all be able to come out to that. And that was kind of like our kickoff to the nonprofit. And then the other really cool thing, so I have a twin sister, and she's a doctor. So I also always joke with people that you shouldn't lose a leg, but if you're going to lose one, having a twin sister who's a doctor is really awesome. And so she came out right when the accident happened. And then eventually, another miracle, there's so many of them, but we were able to get her a job at the hospital where I was doing my rehab. So she moved out and worked in the hospital where I was doing my rehab. It was really cool.
At CFI?
Yes, at the
Very
CFI.
cool. Okay.
So she was working there while I was in rehab. And so because she has that medical experience, she had actually been going to Haiti for the past 10 years with another organization because she's always had kind of a passion for third world medicine. And so when Tim said, hey, let's start the nonprofit, we have so much support. And then he's like, I'm going to start planning the paddleboard fundraiser. You and your sister, Jess, figure out what our cause is. And we're like, okay, well, we want to help amputees, but who do we want to help? Well, it was so cool because she had already worked with amputees in Haiti for the past 10 years. In fact, she had even right after the earthquake in 2010, she had moved down there for 6 months to help a bunch of kids. And so when we decided to start the nonprofit, we're like, this is so cool. We can like start a nonprofit using Christy's story, but like help Jess's kids. And so our very first kids to receive legs were kids that my sister had already had friendships with for the past 6 years. And so we were able to give them the first legs, and I got to teach Kevin's, who's an above-the-knee amputee. He's 15 now. I got to teach him how to run and other kids how to run. And since then, we've had 2 trips. We're planning our third one this summer to go back to Haiti, and that's what we do. It's really fun.
So then do you have like medical practitioners helping the patients in Haiti learn to use the devices, or is it more like you send them up with the prosthetics and then you're relying on the local medical community to establish that?
Okay, so both. We actually have a partnership with a local hospital there. So they have, so that the hospital itself is already there. All that infrastructure is already in place. And then they have a prosthetic lab, but actually the year that Jess and I started this, they had just lost funding for their prosthetic lab. So it had closed down and they were about to donate all their supplies to somebody else. And it just happened that the week before we called them and said, hey, we're looking to come to Haiti. We need a prosthetic lab. Do you guys use yours? And they're like, oh, wow. Yeah, you can. We just lost our funding. We were about to close this down. So basically we open up the prosthetic lab whenever we're there. We bring our own prosthetists, so the guys that make the legs, and our own PTs with us on our trips. And then I usually come, and then maybe another amputee or somebody to run, like, because we're definitely, I'm about the whole concept. So I'm not just going to give you a leg. We're going to teach you how to use it, and we're going to have OTs there to like teach you how to function at home and doing stuff like that. We're going to have PTs there to teach you how to run, and then we also partner with as many as we can of the local Haitians. So we're trying to teach them as we're there, because I don't want them to just only have support while we're there on a trip. That's only twice a year right now with our schedules are what limit us the most. And then those same Haitians will run clinics like once a month when we're not there. So we come twice a year, get people new legs, do all the big major repairs, and then we rely on them to do, smaller checkups on people every month while we're gone.
Yeah, and then I'm sure every time that you go to Haiti, you have new people that you're trying to help. But do you ever get the opportunity to follow up with people that you've seen in the past and get to see their progress?
Absolutely. Every single one that we've given a prosthetic leg or arm to, we bring them back for the follow-on. Like every trip we see the ones that we saw before, because probably by then they need some repairs or something on their last one that we gave them. And then we're also always doing new ones.
That's got to be the most rewarding part, is you actually get to follow up and see how dramatically these people's lives have changed. So that's got to be pretty rewarding when you're visiting, and each time you get to see the same people you've treated before and the remarkable progress they've made. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's funny because my sister, because she's done so much work in Haiti, she speaks Spanish and also a little bit of Creole. So she is kind of the linchpin, and she's the one with all the contacts. She's been there before. And, so it's like such a team effort of like, she's got all the experience and all the stuff, but I'm the amputee. And so it's so funny the first time I went to Haiti, because I swear there's just like an amputee language. Like just everywhere I went, I immediately had a bond with these kids, these Haitian kids, because I don't think they've ever seen a white amputee before. Maybe they've never seen a girl amputee before, or at least not a white girl amputee. And then I'm running and like carrying, one time I was carrying the plaster up the stairs. And first of all, in Haiti, they're like, no girl should carry anything. But then I'm an amputee and I'm carrying the plaster up the stairs. And they kept trying to like help me. I'm like, no, I'm helping. Like, this is my job. And so later I had this Haitian amputee tell me, she was a below the knee, not even above the knee. And she's like, I don't even carry my own laundry. I was like, oh, well, you need to carry your own laundry for sure.
Well, maybe really, adaptive sports is next over there, huh?
I hope, yeah. And you know what? Last time I actually brought a CrossFit instructor who's missing an arm. I brought him with me, and he worked with the kids all week. Every single day he was doing workouts with them, and so that's a big part of it too. We don't let them just like, if they're waiting for something to get adjusted or some work to get done, we're doing abs in the prosthetic shop or we're doing squat or something. We keep them busy, which is really fun.
Well, I'm definitely going to put a link to your foundation up on the website in the show notes. A lot of the listeners here are medical people, so is there anything potentially that the listeners can help you with from a resource or a personnel standpoint that you guys maybe are lacking right now?
Yeah, definitely. So we're always looking for PTs and OTs every single trip that we go, and anybody is welcome to come with us. I also tell, we support our partnership was with a hospital down there. So if I have somebody else who's a nurse or a orthopedic surgeon or whatever their specialty is and they think our organization's cool and they want to come, then I will always ask the hospital, hey, we're already coming this week for prosthetics, but I also have a nurse interested. By any chance, do you guys need an opening for that? Oh, we have an optometrist that would be interested in coming the same week or coming with us, but working there. So we can always try to work out those partnerships. It's kind of hit or miss. Like I've had some accepted, okay, yeah, we will take them, and then another one say, no, we just had a team come and do that, so we don't really need that at this time. But that's always cool, so I love having people do that. And, they always need medical supplies in Haiti, so we're always willing to take, if you give me just normal medical supplies in our organization, we'll get them down there and we'll give them to the hospital that we partnership with. We won't actually use them, but, and then definitely we get donated prosthetic supplies all the time. So we definitely will use those in our clinic itself. So there's lots of ways to help, I would say.
All right. Well, you've been really generous with your time. I guess my last question is, before I let you go, how do you find the time to do all this stuff?
I don't sometimes. So I've definitely learned how to ask for help and, just have a lot of people that help with the foundation specifically because it can get overwhelming, especially for me and my sister having really busy schedules. And I tell everyone right now that, yeah, that's our biggest limiting factor. We have so many people volunteering to go with us. We have a lot of supplies. We even have enough money because our trips aren't that expensive. Haiti's not that expensive of a country, and most of our supplies are donated. So I'm like, I can't even spend the money people have already donated us. I just don't have enough time. So we're working on, we've only had 2 trips and a 3rd trip. So right now we're working on training our other board members and other people to lead teams. So it's not always Jess and I that are leading them, just so that we can have, use what we have, use what support people have given us.
Well, this has been so much fun talking to you, and look forward to seeing you in person again. So thanks so much for everything.
Thanks, Doug. It's been awesome.
Yeah, look forward to chatting again soon. Thanks so much.
Cool.
All right, take care.